Welcome to Isn't It Obvious, where things are obvious. That's going to be the intro.
So all sports games are just meritocracy boiled down to the only benefit you get is the work put in and the product that you have, which really makes them the most even of all games.
Boo. Boo. Down with sports.
Wait, like sport games as in like real sports or sport games like FIFA 2020?
No. As in video sports games are a great analogy for meritocracy.
Video games. Like sports video games.
Yeah, of course. I'm not talking about real sports. Why would I talk about real sports?
What about those video games?
Boring and lame. Give me ones and zeros.
That you can pay to have a better roster because you just can because it's downloadable.
That's not meritocracy.
That's not meritocracy at all.
No, but that is still a meritocracy because they still have to produce. And if not, then you have a giant price tag on a player that is not being beneficial.
No, but you got
to moneyball that.
Buy your way out, though.
That's player.
I think it was like a later series NHL game where like you could grind or farm the right team, or you could just pay real money to get this team. Like, that's not meritocracy. That's just
pay to win.
I'm not talking about going against other people. It's you playing the game by yourself, the way God intended.
Didn't we have a question to get to?
I don't know. Maybe. Welcome to Isn't It Obvious, a podcast. I am your host, Micah, with Phil and Sarah, and today's topic, isn't it high time for the American political system to have a new party shift?
Oh, God, another politics one. Surprise, surprise. We all devolve this
I have
way
a horse, and I'm going to beat it until it's pulp.
Okay.
What party, then, would you shift?
The Democratic Party needs to turn into a centrist party.
Which it's trying
then
to
you
become.
have fringe Republicans end up being the alt-right
Which
tax
is
nothing.
what it's becoming.
Right, but then you need a proper left progressive party. There hasn't been a party to move the goalpost to the left in 60 years.
Well,
ever since the Civil Rights Act in 63, that's the last time the goalpost was ever moved to the left. Goalpost has always been shifting over to the right in subsequent years.
I'm going to ask a serious question. I'm not, no sarcasm intended here. Do you think...
No slash S?
Do you think that's...
Sorry, go on, Phil.
Do you think that it's actually possible to have a progressive party? Honestly.
In this current climate, yes. You have to think of the popularity of Bernie Sanders, with many freshman House representatives are pushing a very progressive agenda, that they had to be Democrats because there's no way a third party could exist in this country. And with how Joe Biden is running for president, he would have been a Republican running for president 20 years ago. And he should have ran as a Republican this year.
But he wouldn't have won, so no, he shouldn't have.
But then we would have had Bernie Sanders as the Democratic
true
candidate. And Joe Biden would then go as an independent or go as a centrist party. But no, he's been, air quotes,
so
Democrat.
Thinking we should move to a three-party system, basically?
Yeah, exactly. And we use this time because of what Trump has done to the Republican Party, to the point that at the RNC, they did not have a platform.
Yeah, they just...
Other than Trump.
And screaming at the camera and reading off prompters.
Oh, yeah. Guilfoyle still makes me laugh. I might get that whole final post tattooed on my back.
So,
I don't know. I thought that there was like two or three. Like there was Eric, and then there was the black man who's a lifelong Democrat, but he's voting Trump because of whatever stupid reasons. And then there was that other girl she had the deadest fish eyes I've ever seen.
The one from Montana?
Maybe the blonde one.
Who had like the coffee company?
Yeah.
That was disturbing.
Yeah, she looked like someone was holding her child ransom, and she had to say all of these things. Or they would murder.
I'm afraid to admit it, but I got on my knees and prayed to God for guidance.
Listen,
if you believe in God, why is praying something you wouldn't want to admit?
Yeah, that too. Go ahead. This is America. You can pray if you want. No one cares.
Unless it's
not a Christian prayer, and then someone might care.
Yep. Yeah. Then it's an issue because America. But we, at this point, have the best opportunity to actually make a functioning third party that can be competitive, can offer new things, and will have enough support in the Democratic Party, but also have enough difference with if Republicans that don't follow Trump turn to the Democratic Party.
Well, then really
So you have like 60 or 70% is the Democratic Party, then 20% is progressive, and 10% is Trump Republican because the Tea Party people are insane.
So fringe Republicans would eventually not die out, but they would become a fringe party, just like the Libertarian Party, who gets some votes all the time, but none to make any difference. And then we're looking at the Democrats becoming the centrist right, and then the progressives become the new left. Yeah. And then we're still back to a two-party system, so it's not really three, and...
People would still vote for Republicans. And
they still vote for Libertarians. They still vote for the Green Party. They do, but they don't matter.
But you will have Republicans win seats in places as an R.
Maybe. I doubt it, though. Not if Democrat becomes the new moderate right.
One of my questions too is like, are there actually a lot of people that want progressivism? I thought there was a large population prior to Super Tuesday of this year, where in year 2020, it was going to be Bernie Sanders wins Super Tuesday, and a lot of these progressivists are going to go out in droves and going to vote for the candidate that actually is addressing some of the serious issues that we face today, the inequality amongst the top 0.1% and everyone else. And then when that happened, his numbers were extremely low. And this was kind of like a turning point in my brain where I'm like, oh, I was wrong. Like, I thought there were a lot of people that were progressives and that wanted change, that wanted fundamental differences in the way our society works. And the ironic part about, and maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid here, about like the Progressive Party is that it's actually meant to help everyone, right? Their intention is that it's going to help even the people who vote for Trump that are not wealthy. It's going to give them decent access to healthcare. It's going to give their children a better shot at education that's not going to cripple them with debt, and so on and so on. And I'm like, yeah, this would benefit even the poor Republicans that for some reason want Trump. These plans and policies are kind of not just for progressives. It's not just for a certain class of people. It's for the majority of people, minus those greedy jackasses at the 0.1 level. So when these talking points are provided to the public, I'm always astounded just like how little people buy into it. So the people that this policy, these progressive plans would offer the most benefit to, they're going to go ahead and vote against their best interest, financial best interest. They're going to complain that they haven't got a wage increase in 10 years. And yet they're going to completely vote for the corporate party of the Republicans.
Well, I mean, they're both
right.
corporate parties.
And it's like you have a candidate that seems to really understand some of the bigger issues you guys are facing, at least in my opinion, could explain why all the healthcare companies and pharmaceuticals and higher education are incredibly greedy. And you're going to say, no, I like Trump better. So that's one thing I don't understand about Progressive Party in general is what are your real numbers? I thought it was like 80% of the people would benefit, so therefore 80% of the people would want this guy. Turns out it's like very few.
But the thing with Super Tuesday is that most of our generation believe in a lot of these progressive values, but we don't belong to the Democratic Party, thus we don't have a vote in Super Tuesday.
Correct.
Because we're not in the party. We just vote Democratic because they half-ass offer the better of the two options.
So what I'm seeing is our generation has more empathy and more our generation is more progressive because we want to help other people succeed. We legitimately want to give everyone this benefit. And then you have the older generations who just, I don't know, maybe it's because they've lived longer and they just hate people more, but they have this contempt of other people. They have this contempt of other people, but they're like, you know what? No, fuck them. Fuck those other people. I don't care. I just want to get mine. I don't care about if everyone benefits. I don't want my hard work going towards the benefit of these people I don't even care about or basically just hate for existing. Rich or poor, black or white, any color, doesn't matter. I just hate other people because other people suck. People are just assholes. And I'm sick of dealing with them. And I don't want any benefits, any handouts going to them because they just suck, even though...
Yeah, our generation has a whole different type of cynicism.
Well, and it's like, we just have such a different... Well, we do have a different type of cynicism, but we also have a different perspective on just everything. Mostly because how we're raised, what kind of cultural and political climate we've grown up in, but also environmental. I was talking to my dad about gardening, and we were trying to come up with solutions.
Getting those white pustules off?
No. We can talk about cucumbers later, all right? Well, actually, this does have to do with cucumbers. So my parents are getting a little older, right? And so it's a little harder for them to get down on their knees in the dirt to harvest their garden vegetables. And so I suggested a trellis. And I had this idea, you can train up cucumbers to go up like a trellis. My dad was like, well, I don't really like your idea. I would rather just use a netting or something that I could just throw away at the end of the season. I can just bundle up all of the leaves and the vines and with the netting and just toss it in the garbage. And I'm sitting here why would you do that? You're just adding to the trash every year with a net.
That's perfect compostable
material. And so I ended up, because this was bothering me, it's this plastic netting. It's nylon or something. Like you can't, like you just throwing it away. It's not like the vines are compostable, but this netting that you're throwing away with this compost is not.
He's planning for the future when the pressure of generations recompresses that plastic into oil again.
I was just flabbergasted, like, why would, and he's like, well, it's because it's easier. And I'm like, or you could just get a metal trellis and burn it off, and then you can reuse your trellis every year. It just blew my mind that he would rather throw something away that isn't biodegradable because it's easier. And I'm just like, me coming from this totally different mentality of like, let's reduce our plastic and garbage waste a little bit, can't we? Don't we do that enough? Can we not? So I went and I found some biodegradable netting. I'm just like, use this then, for fuck's sake.
$700 per yard, but damn it, it's
better. It was not actually that much more expensive. So
it's crazy how being green
I know,
isn't
it's
that
like,
much more expensive than what we're currently doing.
Like, okay, I'll just do a Google search for you, Dad, so you don't pollute more than necessary. Let's think about the sustainability of what we're doing too, maybe. Because I have to live in this world, all right? Sorry.
Hi, Mom, by the way. My mom has this complete opposite take on this. She thinks that our generation is very wasteful. And she's like, well, back in my time, if something broke, we really, really worked hard to repair it.
That's fair.
And then to use it. And then also, if it just didn't work, we would reuse it or repurpose it. To them, it's like we would never get something just because the previous version was obsolete. It would have to break, and then we would do our best to fix it. And she made this comment, this is kind of why, at least in her generation, it was like there weren't a lot of divorces in her social group. And she's like, well, it's because we worked hard to repair things. And then I was like, I mean, I think I had like a really piece of crap car costing more money. I'm just going to get a new car. Mm-hmm. And she's like, no, this is, you're supposed to learn how to upkeep and maintain. And I'm like, no, fuck that. Like, I'm not
you don't have the time to learn how to do this highly skilled job. Like,
I'm also...
No, but that's also a thing. It's been educational gulch where it's become a specialized thing when cars were able to be easily replaced.
You could change out a part, and you could take apart an entire car and put it back together again without needing any special tools.
There's another
Not
one.
Really.
I mean, maybe not transmission.
No, but generally you could.
But I cite how easy it is to replace your rear brake lights or rear turn signal, and how fucking impossible it is to replace your front ones.
Yep.
Because that blows my mind. These are essential things. We need lights on vehicles. Why do I need one part that costs $97 because it's an 8-inch hexagon extension for a wrench that only mechanics have in order to dislodge my front light?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
You can think.
Let alone what's going to happen on my Volkswagen when the fucking LED goes out on the front.
To be fair,
That's
though,
$300.
I feel like car isn't the best example because we still do repair our cars pretty frequently. Whereas...
But it's a specialization.
Yes.
It's not the
play. Like computers, for example,
Right.
or phones, or even simple appliances like a toaster or a microwave. Like, it's just cheaper to go buy a new one for $30 or a printer than to send it to a repair shop and pay for the labor.
The other examples my mother had were microwaves and old CRT televisions and computers or consoles or whatever I wanted. I'm like, I don't like this anymore. In my head, it's obsolete because it doesn't perform as well compared to the latest model that's out. And she's like, oh, this is extremely wasteful for you just to buy things because you're no longer entertained by them. You don't need to get another microwave because this door latch is kind of sticky. You just clean it. And I'm like, no, this door...
No, the crux is you need two microwaves.
And I was like, first of all, you kind of need at least two. And second of all, like this microwave is terrible. In her head, it's like, wow, your generation just will toss and discard for like appliances and computers, electronics, televisions especially, because it just isn't large enough or whatever, rather than just to kind of keep what you have and be grateful for that. I don't know how to respond to this because...
Well, maybe if they weren't so freaking complicated to repair and it wasn't so expensive to repair them versus buying new, then maybe we wouldn't waste these items.
Fixing a flat screen TV, $300 to fix, or you buy a new one.
Or you buy a new one for $200.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry.
There is a weird thing though, right? It's like about convenience.
It's all economics. It's all
economics. It's like, I'm going to buy a net that I don't care about where it goes to at the end. Well, it's only like 10% more to buy a biodegradable one.
Yep.
And in their head, it's like, okay. For me, it's like I get a phone every 2 or 4 years. I don't really necessarily need a new phone. And there's a lot of like e-waste that goes into these smartphones. So there's like this scale problem because this phone that I have in my hands it probably produces way more waste than a net would.
For sure.
But there's also the recycling of the rare earth elements in there is important because we only have a finite.
So in theory, if you're doing the right
those.
thing and you care, you will go to a place where they recycle appliances and, electronics like that, and you will hand it over. And in theory, you'd think, oh, they're going to do the right thing and they're going to do that. Instead of just tossing it in your trash because you're lazy.
Right, in theory.
That's why I have a drawer that's filled with all of my old cell phones.
Yeah.
I actually do too. I haven't
next to my
actually
Zune.
thrown away any of my old broken cell phones. They're all just in a bin. Just in a bin. Someday I'll get off my ass and put them in a recycling center. And some guy who's sorting through this will be like, holy shit, I haven't seen one of these in 10 years.
I'm always reminded of a story when I worked at a delivery company when I first moved down here. And it was a guy who would go to all of these like tech places and malls after a new credit card machine was purchased, because they would throw out all their old credit card scanners or whatever. And there was like an eighth of an ounce of gold on that motherboard. And he would just get all of these things and salvage that and just make bank on this minuscule amount of gold that the stores didn't even know was part of the electronic component that they just chucked.
They don't know or care enough to know what goes into making them. So they're like, whatever, it's obsolete, can't use it anymore, so bye.
Yeah, we got it from corporate, whatever it's got to go, just throw it out.
My thought here is just like, I don't think it's a generation, or maybe it is a generation issue, but like people who are green-minded, there is a scale issue. So one thing we care about like sustainable foods and marketplaces and stuff like that. On the other hand, we're totally fine with going to Amazon to purchase the majority of our products.
I'll be honest, I'm really not.
I avoid using Amazon. I used it to buy this laptop because it was like $200 cheaper than ordering it from HP.
And like so yes, there is occasions where I will use Amazon because it's just the convenience level and the price level are just that much different. But like honestly, if I can, I will go try to find from Amazon, right? Like if I see something I want, I will go and see if they have like their own website where I can just buy direct from them, because fuck you, Amazon. I'm so sick of Amazon. Ugh.
But I mean, like, okay, so the issue here is that we have a subsect of the population that enjoys the infrastructure that we have now, and the people who don't are typically progressive. That's my philosophy. And how that kind of falls into this whole conserving like e-waste or shopping on Amazon or not realizing just how much gold things have as far as old electronics. In my brain, they're connected in a simple way that the status quo is good enough for many people. The status quo is good enough for throwing away expensive rare earth minerals, because who cares? Corporate's going to give us a new one. Status quo is good enough for me to get a new phone every 2 or 4 years. Status quo is good enough for people to get a net, even though it's a little bit more
it's
expensive.
It's that instant gratification. It's that thinking only 1 or 2 steps ahead when you really should be thinking 3, 4, or 5 steps ahead.
But that
the only people who can think 3 or 4 or 5 steps ahead, small group of people, honestly, that would say, yeah, maybe progressivism is the right path because we're heading towards not a good future without it. But I would say a vast majority of people are just going to blindly say status quo is fine.
They're lazy.
Status quo is fine.
It's not worth it.
Lazy.
It's not worth it to them because they don't care enough about other people.
Right.
And their future isn't going to be affected by it.
Not immediately.
Not immediately. Or not close enough to where it's real, and they don't know, like, if they don't have kids, or it might not even affect their kids, so they're like, I don't care, I don't even care about my great grandkids, I won't be alive to see them anyway, so who cares.
The only people who would vote progressive policies are those that are 1 or 2 steps away from losing it all, in my opinion. The ones that have the most
precarious,
gain, least
to
lose.
have the most, their status quo isn't as settled. They can survive as they are now, but they realize that one F up in their life will send them into poverty, or
And of those people, many of them vote Republican. So it's like there's not a lot of fucking people that are going to vote for progressive policies, because I just don't see it in their cards. I agree that these are the right moves if you want to think about forward future issues, UBI or whatever it is. But let's face it, the majority of the people are fine with just being fat, happy, and lazy, and
not thinking about
foremost
potential futures.
But our generation is a generation that is looking more to the future, which is why you have an incredibly progressive congresswoman from New York who is the youngest woman ever elected to the House of Representatives because of her progressive ideas. And we're dealing with the death throes of the boomer age. The fact that baby boomers now, we have an 80-year-old presidential candidate going against a 73-year-old presidential candidate. That is not representative representative of what America is. But we're dealing with that same status quo. That status quo has to shift eventually. So now, I feel, is the best time that we need to have a split in the political party, because Trump has corrupted the Republicans so much. They are just a loony party.
I would agree there.
I would agree there.
And the Democrats are meant to be the sane party. But there's aspersions from Republicans as well as Democrats themselves that they can't be too left, which is why you make a left party that will then grow
And
as
the
our
Democrats
generation
will once
turns
again
into the
become
powers.
where they were way back in the
Right.
day.
The issue I have is that most recently, I think there was a primary that occurred where it was in the East Coast for the Democrats. There was a young person that's the age of 40, I say young, versus someone who's the age of like 70. There's two races like this where there's a primary contention, and both of the younger people had lost. And it was...
Is one of those
I believe
Massachusetts?
so. And I
Because Joe Kennedy ran a horrible campaign, and Ed Markey is a
right.
more progressive candidate.
And I was looking at this, and I'm like, okay, I heard, yeah, it's like it was like the first Kennedy that lost in a campaign. And it's like, oh, you know, there's reasons why. But a little bit of me was sad because the majority of the people that are our generation, millennial or Gen X, like they ain't going for politics. They have no appetite for trying to better themselves by running for Congress or state senate or comptroller.
But I feel at a certain point they'll have to, because the people that are in that position are going to die. Just of old age.
You'd think so, but right now it's like 73-year-old man fighting an 80-year-old man. Like, what is going on?
Right.
Like,
God, I really hope they get into a
Fight.
fist fight at one of these debates. That'd be amazing.
Just watch it.
wait,
Oh, that's funny.
like,
Two old men.
Also, same thing with
fisticuffs.
Kamala and Pence. Oh, it'd be great to watch them fight too.
it really should have happened already. I agree with you, Micah. The fact that it hasn't happened is like, what? Like, Nancy Pelosi is like 100 years old. Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, you'd think at a progressive state that California is, they would have better people to cut, not better, but more. I don't know. It honestly,
I mean, there are 3 Californians.
well, my point.
And I'm not just saying that for the stupid splitting up of the state thing, but there are just 3 different mentalities
Right.
of California.
Big state.
Someday we'll have a state of Jefferson. No, my
Yeah.
problem is that
New California Republic.
it honestly means to me that the Republican Party does a much better job of grooming the next generation. You have these,
I disagree.
because you have these terrible punchable people that are like, oh, we're the conservative party and, you know, we believe in conservative values, and they're younger. But in the Democratic side of it, that party doesn't seem like they're really doing anything about trying to find the next generation that's not Pete Buttigieg.
There is that same type of entitlement issue with the Democratic Party, but it's different than the grift of the Republican Party. Because what are conservative values? And what happens when Republicans actually control bodies of government? They don't do those things.
They don't.
They don't.
Everything
But
they.
In the first 2 years of Trump, he had the House, he had the Senate, he had the presidency, and he had a fairly sympathetic Supreme Court. Not as tilted as it is now, but he had Gorsuch on there. Yeah,
Neil
Gorsuch
Gorsuch.
on there, which tilted it more to the right. But what did they do? What was their policy when they could run
Well,
roughshod?
The point
And
of
Yeah.
Turtle Man made it so it was a simple majority to pass things in the Senate. They passed one thing, and that was a tax cut for billionaires.
So the thing with
That's it.
the Republican Party, though, their philosophy is basically small government, right? Which basically means we're not going to do anything. We're just going to sit, we're going to collect money, and occasionally we'll do like a simple thing that doesn't really affect people that much. But we're really going to just do nothing.
So if they believe in small government, why
we're going to do
in
nothing and
the first
stay out
Bush
of people's
administration
hair.
did they create 2 new bodies of government?
Yeah,
They created ICE and they created Department of Homeland Security that are both bloated government entities
right.
put in under
Yeah.
Republican control.
small government.
My-
Yeah,
It's small government.
Yeah, small government unless we're in power, and then the
Yeah.
federal government does
fair
everything.
enough.
It really does feel like it's small government for areas that actually can help people, and big government for areas that kind of fuck you over.
Yeah.
It's like
Right.
exactly the opposite of what I would want
Yeah,
would
they
to
do.
occur.
Right, which is why to be a young Republican, you just got to be in on the grift.
Or
I agree.
just don't
Look
care.
at who their intelligentsia is. Ben Shapiro believes in nothing other than the fact that women should be property, and he doesn't know what a wet ass pussy is, which is hilarious.
It's a disease,
That-
Micah.
That self burn.
If you need a mop, I talked to my
Yeah.
wife, who's a doctor.
I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know
it's
how
that's
you
it's
can
a-
recover from that. Okay, so but the issue, though, nonetheless, is where the hell are the progressives? That was my point where I can see the next crop of Republican young people come in, and it's infuriating because it's like, oh, well, fuck you, I got mine. Yeah. Like, okay, that's a tale as old as time, I guess. I really hate it because I think it's like a tremendously selfish thing to do in a society. But you see their faces on Fox News and CNN and all the other type of wonderful media that pushes, I'm not like a normal Republican, but I believe in Republican values and I'm young. And they just loved it.
Yeah, but then you have like a Caitlyn Bennett and you're just like, no.
No, I mean, we all agree that they're full of shit. That's the thing. But I don't really see the Democratic side of it. And that should be your progressives that actually believe in...
But you do. You have people at the doorstep, at the beginning of their political career, that have incredibly progressive views that are only going to gain in more power as they progress on because they'll be the incumbent. They'll go into Senate. They'll pass more impactful legislature. And this will spur other progressives to run for office in that sense because they have more allies, which is why the party shift needs to happen. At 35, if AOC doesn't run for president, even if she loses, it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, my thought is that you're going to need a lot more challengers at the primary level. And you're going to need them at every level of governance, not just at the national level, but at the state level too.
But if you make the big tent of the Democratic Party, accepting centrist Republicans, centrist Democrats, and some fringe lefts, then there's an actual debate at local levels of what the Democratic Party stands for. And when the goalpost moves more to the left, because the former Republicans that now vote Democratic, because it's the only sane party, will have to move their goalpost to the left more. That will give a potential rise to a progressive party. Out of what would be the fringe of the left, that is just, no, we should have Medicare for all. We should have universal health care, which is something that centrist Democrats don't want, because that would fuck with their stock options that they've put into their retirement.
Right. I mean, this is a fair point. I mean, I would love to see it. I'm just cynical.
Oh, so am I, but I also don't think America's going to be a country in like 4 years. So what I'm talking about now is lollipop dreamland.
I don't know
Magical
if I
Christmas
believe
land.
that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I agree. I think if we have more candidates that reflect the generation that we live in, but I'm also pretty sure that Democrats are going to snatch defeat to jaws of victory. Like, I grew up long enough to realize that for cynical reasons, the Democratic Party isn't really unified enough to have a single voice. And this is probably because they're just as susceptible to lobbyism as any other party is. That, when it was a Democratic Senate with a Democratic House, with a Democratic executive branch, what was accomplished then? That was the Affordable Care Act that was essentially a Republican plan from one of those eastern states.
The Affordable Care Act was in Obama's second term, wasn't it?
There was a small frame where they all...
Yeah. In 9 to 11, right. Democrats had the House but I think all efforts, TARP was part of that, which arguably saved the country. I think they did it horribly, but it arguably saved the country.
But these are just examples where it's like, you had mentioned when it was a Republican administration, what did they accomplish with all three branches controlled, or not three branches? Well, it was, essentially with a Supreme Court in their pocket. And then it's like, oh, tax cuts to the rich. Not looser gun control laws or having stricter abortion legislative written. Like, no, none of that. None of the things that, the wedge issues that we all froth at the mouth about. I want to believe that, like, if there is a blue wave, that there will actually be some quality of life improvement led by a progressive party. Like, that would be magical Christmas land for me. But I am so cynical now that I just can't have any hope left.
Yeah, it's like, show me and then I'll believe you.
Right.
Present me with your...
But it's on our generation to make it.
That's true. Sometimes I think it's...
the onus is on us.
It's the laziest fucking thing to sit and blame politicians for every wrong in our country when we have agency too. As people, we can do stuff too. We can run if we want. We are citizens, right? We could run for a seat.
I mean, I can count on both of your votes when I run in 2024.
I will not vote for you, Micah. Not
come
ever.
Come on.
But.
Well, dear viewers, if you will also give us a vote.
Just don't be lazy, is what I'm saying.
Sometime. That's also a hallmark of our generation, though. That's part of the fun. If we can do it the laziest way possible, that's a presidency.
I mean, lazy is just another way to say efficient, right?
Exactly. It is the minimal amount of effort to accomplish your goal.
Sure. Now just make sure everyone else falls in line with that and doesn't have anything to say about it. No complaints.
Well, yeah, that's what the police are for.
Oh, okay. Okay. I see where this is going.
Checkmate liberals.
Let's never vote for Micah, ever. It's just bad.
If I had just 4 years,
no,
all I want is 4 years. I'll be a one-term
do it.
president, but I'll
I
do
swear
so
to God,
much.
if anyone, I will campaign against you. Not to run, just I will be the mudslinger. Like,
there's
he's my
only-
friend, but I'm just not gonna let him. I'm not gonna let him win. He cannot.
He's my friend. Nobody should vote for him.
It's just a bad idea all around.
I will vote for you, Micah.
Yes.
Because I believe in you.
I will kidnap you on the day of the election.
All right,
and
you
make sure.
you know you will never be able to do
Kidding.
that.
You're right.
Your
right.
hands
I'm way
bruised
too
from
lazy.
static electricity.
It's true. Dude, I got some mosquito bites last
All right, and
last
before we
weekend.
get too medical, thanks, Mom.
Listen, it was just bruises, okay? It's like they punched me in the legs. All right, thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom. Vote for Micah.
No, don't do it.